I've heard some people say you start answering this question, tell me about yourself, by thanking them. Thank you for bringing me here for this interview. It's a tremendous opportunity, blah, 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 blah. No, you should have done that as part of your greeting when you walked in the room. Okay, that's just part of etiquette. Okay, so when they welcome you in, they say, have a seat or whatever. If it's a physical interview, you say, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity. It's very exciting. I'm looking forward to, getting to know this position and getting to know a bit of what you guys have in mind. So thank you very much. Something like that, right? Just part of etiquette. Learn etiquette. If you don't know etiquette, if you're an introvert, you're a technical introvert, learn the basics of etiquette, which is basically manners, right? It's like an evolution of manners. And the whole purpose of manners is to make people feel good, right? So that people don't get offended and they don't get upset. You want people to feel good about meeting you, and you don't want something you say to be misconstrued and then they get all insulted, right? That's the purpose of manners, and that's the purpose of etiquette. It's just all the same thing. The result is for them to like you. It's for them to enjoy dealing with you. And when you're done, they're glad that they met you and they had that exchange with you. They don't think, oh, Christ, I'm glad that that's over, right? They don't go away thinking like that after meeting you for the first time. They think, wow, that person was awesome. I'd like to talk to them again. It was easy. It was fun. We clicked. I could interact with that person more. And that's actually the most important thing in a job interview, that they go away thinking that. If they go away thinking like, oh, I hate that person, I don't want to ever see them again, do you think they're going to pick you to work with them? Probably not. So no matter how qualified you are, no matter how much technical skills you have, if they walk away from the interview feeling like that, it's not going to go well. So that's very important to understand. Okay. Now, this is the most general question they could possibly ask, right? They say, tell me about yourself. How would you give a wrong answer? Like, what would a wrong answer look like? It's pretty hard to get a wrong answer. Maybe if you said something that had nothing to do with you, they said, tell me about yourself. And you say, oh, okay, great. Okay. So Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart had perfect pitch. It's like, I guess that would be a wrong answer because it's not about you. But anything you could say that's somewhat related to you would technically be an answer to this question, right? That's why I think people are worried about this question, because presumably, it's not quite that open-ended. They're looking for something, but we don't know what it is, right? Okay, you're absolutely right. They are looking for a specific thing. We understand what that is by the context clues. They're asking you this in a job interview. If they were to ask you this when you were not on a job interview, you were with your friends, you're out partying, and somebody of the opposite gender or maybe the same gender says this to you, in the hope of some kind of close personal romantic encounter, obviously you're going to give a different answer, right? It's based on the context. When they say, when you're out in the romantic thing, are you going to run down your resume? No, of course not, right? Right? You're going to talk about how absolutely awesome you are and how everybody likes you and how you're the most attractive person to ever walk the earth. That's what you're going to say. Now, if you say that in the job interview, obviously it's bad, right? So it's the context we're talking about. Okay, they can also use different words to ask this question. They can say, walk me through your resume. They can say, I wrote down some examples here. How would you describe yourself? Please introduce yourself. What brings you here, right? What makes you tick? That's not exactly a popular one, but it's still a version of it. They can even say, tell me something that's not on your resume, right? What's the answer to that? It's usually to give them something from your resume. Because number one, everything relevant about you really, most of it is on your resume. And number two, 99% of the time, these people asking that question, they don't know what's on your resume. They they might have looked at it 3 weeks ago and they haven't looked at it since. What would they know about what's on your resume and what's not on your resume? They're just trying to get something out of you. Okay? So they can ask this question in all these different forms. It's the same question. It's an open-ended question about you. Usually it's used as the icebreaker. It's the first question they ask in the job interview. And it's supposed to, in theory, get a free-flowing conversation going and be an introduction to frame everything. Usually it's not, because most recruiters are so bad at having conversations with people that they wouldn't know how to start a conversation. So they think by asking the most cliched thing ever written that it would start a free-flowing conversation. They're wrong. But that's what they're going for anyway. Okay. So how do we answer this question? Well, we give them what they're looking for. What are they looking for? Well, here's the fun part. What they're looking for changes based on who you're talking to. If you're talking to a hiring manager will be your boss if you get the job. So you could talk all about the job. You could talk about the technicalities of how you do it. Maybe you've been doing it for a few years, so you could talk shop with them, right? And they'll get into it. They'll like that. They want to have some conversations about the subject matter of the job. And they love that, right? The problem is, if you're talking to a recruiter is completely different. They work in the HR department. They don't know anything about the job that they're hiring for. So if you start talking shop to them about the technicalities of how you do the job, like if it's a technician job and you start talking to them all about electronics and equipment, they won't understand any of that. So that's not giving them what they want. What they do understand are, communication skills and ambitions and things like that, right? They work in the HR department. So you have to give them what they want. Okay, now, the problem is you don't know who these people are half the time. Is this a recruiter? Is this a hiring manager? You don't even know half the time. And you don't really know what's going on inside their head. So we've got to fall back on like a default thing that will work no matter who we're talking to. And that's where we come to some possible answers here. Finally. Okay? The most basic answer you could give to this question is going down the job requirements. So if they posted a job and they said, we're looking for someone who's got a degree in crazy math and they have 5 years experience doing crazy math in a university, and they have skills in writing reports so they can write up all kinds of fancy reports on crazy math. Okay, that's what the job posting says. That's what you're here to interview for. So you get to the interview, they say, tell me about yourself. And you say, certainly. And then you talk about how you have a degree in crazy math and how you've got 6 years experience working in an academic environment where you're teaching and discussing crazy math, and how you have several publications where you've written reports on subjects related to crazy math, right? So you're basically mirroring the job requirements, okay? You should be doing this in a job interview anyway, regardless of what the question they ask you. You want them to know that you've got a degree in crazy math, you have experience in crazy math, and you have skills in crazy math, right? So that's what you're trying to convey over the course of the interview. So you can start right here in the first question. Tell me about yourself. And chances are they will not react and say, well, that's not what we were wanting to know. It's like, okay, well, I told you something about myself. It's totally relevant to the job, and it's what you said you're looking for. So I think we should start off with that. So that's a passable answer, but that's not the answer that I would recommend. The answer I'd recommend is a little bit more sophisticated. I've done a video on this. It's the most popular video on my channel. It's in 3 parts. The first thing you say is this line, okay? You say, well, as you can see from my resume. Now that line is optional. It's more of a memory jog for you about what you're going to do next, but you can say that, okay? As you can see from my resume. Then you go down your resume and in 45 seconds you give a high-level summary of it. I've got a degree in this, I've got some experience doing this, and I've got skills in this area. You know, I got my degree first, then I did. Now you do it in I guess it's chronological. It's a chronological order where you start with the oldest and then you come up to the newest. I first got a degree in crazy math, then I took this job in crazy math, then I worked there for 2 years and I came over here, and my most recent job was working in this role at this place, doing crazy math, teaching it, and writing papers on it. Okay? You're coming from the past all the way up to the present. You do this in 45 seconds, and then you end with the line. This is the third part. And that's what brings me here today, and why I'm excited to learn more about this opportunity. There's a bit to unpack here. The problem with a question like, tell me about yourself, is that it tempts people to go off script, to say things that weren't in your job application and that weren't in your resume. Now, how do you know that they respond favorably to those things? Let's say you're talking to somebody who absolutely hates sports. Okay, they love music and movies, but they hate sports. They think anyone who does sports is like a idiot, jock, moron kind of thing. That's their opinion. Okay? They're right, by the way. I'm just kidding. And that's their opinion. Now, you talk to them and you happen to volunteer. They say, tell me about yourself. And you say, oh, well, you know, I'm this age, and, you know, one of my hobbies is I like to play hockey or football or whatever you play, lacrosse, water polo, you know, Mexican lawnmower jumping, you know, whatever it is that, like, you know, really, really gets you off, you know, from a sort of competitive point of view. And unbeknownst to you, you just struck out. They heard that and they go, no, this is not going to work. I don't want to work with some jock. I hate people that like sports. Mexican lawnmower jumping? Are you kidding me? I mean, is that the thing where you wear the hockey goalie pads and you jump over the inverted lawnmowers? No, that's not going to fly here. We're a little bit more professional than that. So I'm sorry, you're not a good fit, right? So that you went off script and you just eliminated yourself, unbeknownst to you, in like the first minute, okay? So the advantage of going down your resume is that the material on it is safe. You sent it in, they read it. Based on reading what you sent in, they gave you an interview. They didn't eliminate you. So obviously, if they read your resume, nothing on there eliminated you. So if you go to that material, you're not going to eliminate yourself, right? That's the idea. It's safe material to use. So that's why I recommend you answer this question by summarizing your resume. There are some recruiters out there that they don't like that answer because they know that we're onto them. You know, this is the thing. And they have all kinds of retarded answers to this where they say, well, if I wanted to know what was on your resume, I'd ask you about your resume. It's like, yeah, but you didn't, did you? You asked the most general question imaginable. And only a fool asks the general question expecting a very specific answer and is going to like rake you over the coals if you didn't give that specific answer. I've seen a lot of people do this. It's like they failed conversational skills or interviewing skills 101. If you want to know about their ambition, don't say, tell me about yourself. Say, what are your ambitions? It's pretty simple, right? So the thing is, they can't eliminate you if you just explain your resume. The other reason why you only want to do this in 45 seconds is because you don't want to take up the whole interview just summarizing your resume and talking about what you did at some other job 5 years ago that has nothing to do with this job you're here to interview for, right? You want to spend your interview time, your talk time, of which you only might have 5 minutes or something in total. You want to spend it explaining why you have everything they're looking for and you're the best candidate. That's what you want to spend it on. Not talking about something you did for somebody else years ago that's irrelevant, right? So we want to summarize our resume quickly, give a polite professional answer, and then get the hell off this question so we can start talking more specifically about how we have what they want. And that's going to come in the next questions. Does that make sense? So just to recap, the best answer that I would recommend is you start by saying the line, well, as you can see from my resume, this line is optional because you depending on how you say that, it can come across condescending. So you could just eliminate it. But then part 2 of 3 is you summarize your resume in 45 seconds, just give a high-level summary, starting with your education and then your experience in chronological order, where you start with your oldest stuff and then you come up to the latest stuff, and then you end with, and that's what brings me here today and why I'm excited to learn more about this opportunity. That's the line you say at the end. Because you want to steer the conversation to talk about this job, not let's dwell on something you did years ago that's irrelevant. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. There's a couple of things I do want to say here about this. If you're coming straight out of school and your concern is that you don't have a lot of career experience or any, you might not have had a career job before, okay? I want to say that you do have more experience than you think, okay? A lot of the things you did in school, being highly trainable, meeting deadlines, having a good work ethic, asking for clarification when you need clarification, doing extra work as required to meet deadlines, having to meet a certain quality standard, having to pass exams, all this kind of stuff, having to work in groups, having to do presentations, having to collaborate with people and deal with conflicts between members in a group. These are all skills that are required for a job. They're the main skills that are required for a job. It's what a recruiter wants to hear from you about how you can do. Okay, so you can tap all of that experience that you had in school to answer these questions. So when you do your homework for what to say in a job interview, remember, use all of that experience. Think up specific cases and examples to illustrate all of those. Okay, so don't just say, oh, I don't have any experience. You have a lot more experience than you think. And finally, one last point, never say anything negative about you, about anyone else, about anything in a job interview. Even when they try and bait you to do this. When they say, like, tell me about, the worst boss you ever had. What did you hate most about your worst boss or your last boss? Like, even when they bait you, you always answer like, well, actually, there's really not much there that I hate. I don't recall hating anything that they did. We actually got along pretty well. And, sometimes there's conflicts that inevitably happen. There's miscommunications, but through good communication skills, you resolve those and then you make it work and it moves forward. So I never really had any issues. Something like that. You never get baited into saying anything negative about yourself or anyone else because you're making a first impression. They don't know you. And the first words out of your mouth are, I really don't have any experience with this. That's who you are to them. You're a non-starter. Okay? So that's basically what I have to say about the best answer to the question, tell me about yourself.